Hello and welcome. We find ourselves at the 50-yard line looking through the Leupold 4-12 by 40 VXR. VXR means it's got illumination, and that's basically where we're going to start out, because the illumination control on this particular scope is a push button, as is the case with most of the Leupold scopes. And I have to say, I don't really care for it. If you accidentally want to go up in brightness when you're going down in brightness, it takes a while for you to get back to the original brightness you were at. Do not mind the flashing, that is only because the refresh rate of the camera, not from the dot itself. However, when you get to minimum or maximum brightness, it will flash to let you know that it's there. Now I can talk about the worst part about this scope. There you have it. The eye relief changes as you change magnification. So with a good eye box at 4x, jumping up to 12x, like you'll see again here, you'll notice that it starts to tunnel. Quite badly, in fact. The iBox test, however, is pretty good. The 4x is quite open and forgiving, which would believe you to think that if it's quite open at 4x, if I change magnification higher, should be okay. But it just isn't. And more on that later. 8x, you could see it's getting a little bit tighter, but it's still pretty usable. If you have perfect eye relief at 4x, by 8x you still do not have to change it, but above that you do. And here at 12x, you'll see that it does get very tight, and that is the main problem with this scope. If you set up your eye relief to be perfect at 4x, if you're jumping up to 12x, it's going to be tight, and vice versa. As you'll see here, the 4x doesn't look too good, but it's perfectly set up for 12x.
10, 12.
Those are two chickens that you'll see inside the scope, and those are at 200 yards. This is the same range that I filmed a lot of my other scopes at last year before COVID, so that is why it's included in this video. I've had the scope on my shelf for about a year and a half and just haven't gotten a chance to really finish it. But as you can see, the glass is very clear at 12x. It's also pretty bright. It's not as bright as I was hoping it would be, considering this is technically a quote-unquote hunting scope. You can see it's very clearly overcast, and it does play into the fact that it might not be ideal for very dark conditions. I believe we're looking now at turkeys at about 300 yard line, and again it's still very sharp. Now we're looking at the 500 meter line at a boar. Again, you could see that the glass is extremely sharp, clear, and pretty bright. Even when I zoom in with the camera, you can really see a lot of finite detail looking at these targets. Again, the glass clarity is very good. But for whatever reason, whenever you go from either extreme, from 4 to 12 or 12 to 4, and you have one particular eye relief set up for either, it just falls flat on its face. Now, having the eye relief change with the magnification might not be that much of a bother for you, but for me, it really is, because at the price point that these come in, you should expect that not to happen. And the fact that this is a 4 to 12 means that it's only a 3x magnification factor, so it's not really that extreme. There are 7x magnification factor scopes coming out now, so just think of that. Again though, the glass looks excellent, and even here in the woods at 4x, it still looks really good. However, it might have too tight of a field of view for most, including myself, especially if you plan on using this for hunting. However, the reticle and the illumination are very easy to pick up when looking through the wooded area. To the eagle-eyed viewer, you will now note that there are leaves on all the trees, as opposed to it being the dead of winter. And that's because I realized I never got any good footage with this thing during really bright daytime environments. So here we are looking at a 400-yard-ish steel door that's about 80 inches tall. And again, the glass on this thing does not disappoint. The clarity and the sharpness are all there. And even the illumination, as you can see, is very clearly daytime bright. Though not as bright as one might expect or hope for, it still gets the job done. This being primarily a hunting scope, this is the same steel door at the twilight hours of the same day. So probably like around 8:30 p.m. The sun had just finished setting over the horizon, and you can clearly see that it's still pretty usable in darker environments. And the same can be said for the illumination, which now stands out quite nicely. Now, despite the fact that this is not quote-unquote a tactical style scope, it's still nice to know that you're going to have good tracking on both the windage and elevation. Now, this being my first attempt at an MOA target, each one of those darker blocks is 3 MOA. If you hear me talking in the background, it's 12 clicks per box, both over and up. So we just moved a total of 9 MOA to the right, and we're going to do another 9 MOA up, going back to the center and continuing all the way up on the elevation.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Good.
Now, if you watch my unboxing of this scope, you will note that the turrets on this are obviously quick adjustable, but there is no real easy indication of figuring out how much you are adjusting it other than feel and sound. There is no real good mark on the body or on the turrets to really have you be able to count it out with marks. And in my opinion, it has a pretty good performance. It tracks straight and true with just a little bit shy in the elevation. But again, with the BDC on this, you're going to set it and forget it.
So there you have it. I like the scope. I really wanted to love this scope. Why? Well, I bought it particularly for a rifle that I had bought at the time, a year and a half or so ago. And I wanted a very simple, easy to use, lightweight scope to match this rifle. And it needed to have no larger than a 40mm front objective. This seemed to fit the bill perfectly. I wanted a pretty low magnification range. 4 is a little bit higher than what I was willing to go, but everything about this fit the bill perfectly. 4 to 12 by 40. It's very lightweight, it's got illumination, it's got a BDC, and it has a very quick adjustable magnification ring, which I really like. However, this happened at the very end of the video. I had taken my rings off of this a while ago. I put the rings back on to finish the steel door video and the tracking test, and for whatever reason, it started to get really tight around 6x. Going from 4 to 6, it actually feels like you're going over a big hump. There's a lot more resistance there than there was beforehand. Now, I had put the ring dead center over here and torqued it with just my fingertip pressure, not a lot. Definitely not the 15 to 18 inch-pounds like most scopes call out. So I don't know what happened with this, but Leupold's going to be getting an email from me just trying to figure out if I should be overly concerned about that. Illumination, I'm not too sold on the button. You push it on, it comes on about maximum brightness. I have noticed that when I've turned it on, sometimes it will be one step lower than maximum brightness. You push it again to go to maximum brightness, and then you keep on pushing it to go lower. But then you can't just go all the way back to top. You have to go through the range of top to bottom, bottom to top, and it does take a while to do it. I'm a much bigger fan of just a real quick turn dial with offs in between. So this way, you find a spot where you like it, you keep it there. You don't have to worry about it. If you want to know if it's on or not, you look at the dial and see that it's clearly in the off position. Here, you have to actually get behind it and look through it. Not the end of the world, but I just don't really care for it. I do like how the button is pretty hard to get to, so you don't have to worry about accidentally turning it on, but I don't know if it's for me. However, one reason why you would consider buying this scope, or in fact, most Leupold products, is the weight. This 4 to 12 by 40 comes in at a very featherweight 15.13 ounces. Compare that to an AccuPower 1 to 4, which is not considered to be a very heavy LPVO, and you will see it comes in at a full ounce heavier. What about something like this? An SWFA Fix 20X with aluminum rings. These rings are not that heavy, only a couple ounces. Well, the proof is in the pudding. It's a full 10 ounces heavier. Let's subtract 2 ounces for the rings. It's a full 8 ounces heavier. If you're going to be using this on a hunt or something like that, having the lack of weight is really important. Now, for the 1 or 2 people that might be asking, well, what did I replace this with on my rifle? Well, to try to show you, I'm a huge fan of Counter-Strike, and I always played around with the Steyr Scout, or the Schmidt Scout if you're a CS 1.5 or 1.6 fan, and I wanted to get a scope that would exactly replicate what was on that gun. You'd have 2 magnification ranges, pretty low to pretty high, and I wanted something with that sort of same basis. I already had the rings, which fit the top of this receiver perfectly, and I needed 40mm at most to clear the rail. Because as you can see, it's a completely flat top like you'd find on an AR-15. I opted for this Gen 1 PST 2.5 by 10 from Vortex, and I have to say I absolutely love this scope. I've had it on here for a couple of months now, and it is just perfect, with the exception of it really needs a throw lever. But this is going to be coming off of here soon for a full review, because I absolutely love this scope. And that's basically it. The biggest problem I have for this is the eye relief changing from 4 to 12. If it's going to be a bother for you, look somewhere else. If you can get past that, I think that this is a very usable and very useful scope. Anyway, that's going to conclude this first person review. Thank you very much for watching. See you again next time.